alungil silsil mora rogul adal kuk no sabi ilmet magara ilal 2000 mortel program rigite to guni tirgel ngarai kre belau kira kwa masaival mahawai mamrigel mabibira blu adal kuk mo sabi irel el me pengedre al sils tial program rigite el angah mal beto kaikel ngia isela blu adal tial merkol tal sandel kupodo mas ma direkel el togoy nadu complementary gid mabluat del girel del matangai o top da sued del girel endi el al sil se como mesrangal rubal do orbitang lo marmar lo ingat el ganga togo bets lo kya na merbe laura el lo mkatal lo ura pasifik ya aurere la igel luror ngia a omese ol top de ol olta estoba igel togora am ngadar bas mal togam rigel el corruption mang akmo olingitringi modi ngil mo osmodi akmo blas mo luida igel togol goy di USA gide di bora igel el maklot tutel togol ngiam la do rabluat tal merkol tal sunday mang kadal am denglis el lultutak la makatmok mla to dra agar grill direkel katengel el togol temelela la mla do berbelau era adel ngia amarshar un tirgel bulis rakort el diwayar bulis lo lava boy se mangarra jas se mangarra togora kort mende kabul dikel moringi engei gidel longerul adar se gidel tigal bulis rakorta amno milngaleb dra abu igel ngia alil etie lemlo lakra martial parking latra korte tungul moso sois bra arumra kortel ligel boringi trigel adel el moragar grill emergoe ngal longerul adra martial amlo mengaleb dringi mitel olbedia mala tara martial urega dringil umura sel atkalela imal no hospital mergoe ngai gidel ada adiregel mulga dur ngal buigel melas malwaseng nel lagal bolo olo ais lo se tia kita dilub diregel no ngal buigel temala imalam no rakort mlora ablia bulis mangdulia report ngi mlom kate katel madel manglo kloang lamul girele finally ol tutak latilo se ongim luror ra te nombre ka sunday lo se mlo tau tralla ra o mangaleb mang se kidel anga amla tob mang ngatengel toim la tob de direk bang direk Udesuall ra se elang nganga adalo urora kort ngar eungira atiala akort marjas etmo jas tial case tiang muangarang meselul tutak tilo bata dimle imol togor o mangle bata amno mutau tringi egel bebi rat gol skum ko tomle la rata temela uror ra wasura uror egen guk magrate telele mo tutak malu bendiak ndidim la karte tutak seguida togol mede el mgdiregel elo mesringi mang tianga direglo giulle laikel bebi rato ora arbulis el ngaria bulis el kuk me accident e diregel no reka mlo tob dra buai mo ul mnguk la mrula tutak la ba diregel tarang arba bulis el bedia ba atar bulis ra atamra uror ra basura uror mai gidel togoi nadub adirek ko dirgado esra selbe laura ai kal merkorra meng gora Udesuall o songor tial wase ai kal togora adal tira o ngora la tutela la ngara meng seguida ai gida bebira mklol tutel togoi nadub emergo direk kuk tara atogoi kuk nadub ngablur oreor seguida el londim laringira aru bagar oreor ma adra idi de mangara metal mangara mai broel meltut ka ay budul el ab esili budul ngiam lo tutkia amlip metul mo o ngara ngamatal mo mreda ngamatal si da klo da ber oror mang imora tokol besel tokoy mladu leng le jani gi bon sam le mreda ngamatal lem lama na motarrak ngagi da besel adl kuk mlavatut ka el Alexander mrebli budula amlut kringi eguk tungol mera atogor el al Sunday ikadal am dengel wa sea ngaringia ka sel kamang talbabier el morros el morar adra media ma mora motaklab lur belau el ngia mulgo atogol girela agragri la judiciary el waya lo sing maltamal ra role laureor ma role la togora al se laureor agragri mangla tuobra aisra blu e diregel lo ulama amredra agragri chief justice all the icing raigalau arirelia babiel na tuobdel el waya lo lang bai ke del toy el dimlagal bolo o aisro sai kan toy el wasen klamrang mal ubendiak dingkal mredra agragri la wase diagal dimlagal ul to wasen ali si eta mesai ngergi dimlagal sai ngergi mendiagal bolo o sawa da gegi del lul masal toil wasen miltamal ra togora agragri waselen wasar adal mutal akla agiril ngariat lil mos modatrir egel letrigagi del ekal toil mutal akra togora agragri adim lagal besia te al bolo sadar tir mendiagal bolo sawa mendi mesada segi del el tretelel do mesringi waya guk el togora la ra altomal la engi omtera angil mom sadar tir abel katak wasa dongra lauro ra kabelment ada pelau suguma ngaringa to gol duob el metar sula ada pela madak metelu usia babel waisei malu betuk tim mugor bebidarat adongra lauro lagi mosos os modil wasai kang merang malu bendia e momas ay gil to go do selo mesringin ngora besel tretal kuk trigal dika gisanga de kuk tongra laurore el sugum ko mesel waseng aringia ara adaka ak mutu ko le gawa ngot rail de tamdak trakaw kaul meredel lagi mo mai sirabel oltro ase ay kang brang mal ubendia regardless ase ay kang ule ka babier ule ka tora ngor ule ka ngot liga smadle tiang kabelment ada bela ka urur kabelment da gukta tokora agril marur to biang ulama marur administration dio sisi girira aradal metaklet smau da tergok amondai matoy ada bela otobad mal sugum da kamra tom da setiak tiagil tokol gel gatal adi kalmra malu tegil to adi ado dengel waseng meram gedi mosiraper malu tigi damram gut makli sumakli agum da so segida ungil tretelela adorur taurol bumesaigel togoil ngia mildung sel babier yang merengel togoy nda kasbe tasel wasendi blue lak rogi ngari abe biringil mra meng tial bulu age krem ko mengel waseng ngarang argi sel tu atogoy agire lungil masaw di seigide emragoy eguk bebirra aisa ngaringia imol mal ne club tutelel londi bel maringi sel al Sunday te nombre el Sunday ra tirigel kami tir lolong seur belau el tira omda sul girela okot makla ke isar belau etum lot mak tir mar mataklel belau eto omesa to kera omesa ikel ngiam klo tutel tugul albang tel belu edire klo top dauldas was etum garange emo Olto dauldas lga osam aklel matletelel ot maklel age isar tial beluat dari aklo tutel el meeting amang takleda da orengel por se bol sub irel el kukko mesagegi de polo waisergi de lo top ige de ngia ungil toy mal belum sel toy kirela ot makla ge isar gi de maltal mal al sils klo tutrela abol masmok emergo esera ongerulurior sa ongerulurior ang mlaringi amal cloud to telon dibel mlaria blurungi wal tianga amam tru mewidel elon dibel sel ada kabelment el tira ongra ara arole okot maklela aul delidel el syukang regit matak lang regit maklib elaw regit naringi blurungi wal tano masada takora arol sel omangat sel kot el time ada belam lo madengel wasya rol la tingil mal di la tingil om el dia kalomot kradlel el olto trangal mal bolu el maradalal seguid el tugo ese dilub ngiwal sel al tatala ngita brut koil betige gidel ada tor kita mengli sel al du emergo ngagi dengkal masl el kuk merma bengget enganga akir ngeremide mal mere del menga akira amal go kem lomre lomeu del bi men bisa igide el ikida madgel washa president maradala maral mora blur ngaur mamlora ablura blilio men dimlak pong ayurin ndi kureng selo washa mal mle betok amdung algo ngaur amle wal sikang ada ngaur ma blilio mendire kem wal sika tema legal mera ora president maradala ramla imita suelo aklapse meng mal betok ay kel mildung dit taigi sel malt merangul ngal president amrurungi emrurungi kel nombre kel president emal girel ngarngil leng mal girel adrablu el kmul de suira mtaklir ermeng sawla mtaklo sitigat rol girel watan lengal president surang al ma adro gulau tirka employee git tirka orol giret gider mom dengan setika lorol lorelet ngarat temru ngarat lorol ke mom dengan itu pada sas dak men nam uid dal ko dir ko uid ko mru lailang ngada mrenga sulira president maradal upno sabil yang edik mal mrenga sulira ada ngayon marada blilio manlo mul de suir ya kureng sel ko panne betok mo marada dus ela amal mria gim karawol tak o ay rosi tigat dilul mogarang president dilul mogarang digi momot mokni mana lo ay seguide em la mengal dile bodo wa te alam sangalo kargide ko adang ok kumeser nging ngol ko ay gidele maramar gal masana dilul wasi kan mustat lo ko mengga lokya ka plako akmol ko ngem sam ul ko aku maul ko tiale imong mengakmo lingit ringi mosmodi jak tilu kami laseng dimdak tilang klel dikti kulu ay saurerele ayrin makmo lingit ringi mo osyokan ni
engka koram tali ruba engka malgo tali mahalati kungil tutal merbekla adal ko bangketa raw Udesuall al tutaw and welcome John. Welcome back to Palau. It's so good to see you.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Oh.
It was a beautiful shirt you got there. I can't help but say it.
It is. And it was 2 years ago that I was last with both of you here, and I got out on the last flight to Taiwan before all the COVID travel imploded, and I'd see that finally the Taiwanese airlines this weekend start their regular occurrences again. So
that's great news.
Yeah, it's a good sign.
Yes.
And so lovely to be back in Palau.
Well, it's been a long time, so what happened since we last saw you? What did you say here and left us? And what have you done since then for 2 years? And why are you here?
Excellent. So you are holding me to be accountable. So, and as Irene also is. Well, I'm still with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. UNODC, working on anti-corruption, and out of our Fiji regional office, and now we're expanding and also working Southeast Asia and the Pacific with my colleague Annika Wythes. So I'm just here for 10 days this time, and we're doing some training workshop with the Palau Media Council and on financial reporting and management of financial resources, and how can journalists be accessing documents, particularly publicly available documents. And yesterday had the great pleasure, and Moses was there as well, for the 37th anniversary of the office of the state prosecutor.
Can we have her summarize your comments
Yes,
before?
again.
37th anniversary.
Yep.
Mal masaula Mr. John Hyde ngamle kestera Moses mga kara. That was at the start of the pandemic, or when you last were here and then you left. Mang lamot telara kasera last lame el ang kong luatal me ngero rakamatedop el ang lalutal me malogrer el altay me lobangela Palau Media Council madiregal kumtas el alsil sa tadiregal ngani sel program retir maratra Attorney General's Office ya eli algong manlongi larngul guk mabangela Special Prosecutor ma timringir celebrate 37th anniversary tir Mlana West Plaza and Lebu Street.
Enganga oral lobangel sila ladara a UN international gira tigil o mesa tokora adal ngreng
O mga darbas.
o mga darbasa o malamalala ra kablement madal ngreng ra blulat hindi selo bisil kuk ngara Bangkok ke kungura tiagidel Asia ma Pacific iyo ngasegide siya urerel mang tengartiang al direk mudadu o rolo bunte la obisa Attorney General
Special Prosecutor
mungel merdila trireng ya mertiang tri adra media adra news mangarnya osong that's this afternoon, right? With the media?
Yeah.
Yes, for the media, sunset this afternoon and this
Sunset
morning.
handover.
Yep, I'll be rushing down to the Marine Law Centre, and we're working with the Attorney General and other government officials. Because one of the great things that's happened during the 2 years is Palau is one of the 189 signatories to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, and Palau completed their review. And what happens, you invite 2 other countries to come in and help you, and you talk to your local people and you say, well, how are we really doing in this battle against corruption? And Palau, to its credit, just last month published fully its whole review. And Palau, the government and people here are quite open on challenges, issues such as perhaps we need to be looking at whistleblower legislation and a whole range of other areas. And as well as that, of course, COVID's been the big thing, and there's been all this money coming in for COVID to help, as well as climate financing. And I was going to say luckily, but I can't make an opinion. There is a change of government in Australia, and so now Australia is funding and more pushing the issue of climate change.
And it's the Labour government now.
Yes, and in the interest of transparency, and Moses knows for my sins, I was a member of Parliament in Australia for 13 years. So
As Labour or?
yes,
Labour?
I was with the Labor.
Did you know that I was a guest of the Labour government in the 80s because I was a senator? I went
Yes.
to the
To
Parliament.
Australia?
Yeah, I was a guest of the Parliament, and while there's a session, we went to that restaurant, and then they were monitoring the vote, and we were drinking wine while the session was going on. So when they vote, then they go in to vote, and then come back to drinking wine there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
Wow.
good.
Yeah, just so you know, both Moses and I agree sometimes the parliamentary system is efficient, so it's instead of having to wait for 3 readings from one house to 3 readings in the second house.
To
Yep.
the president. It's a bit cumbersome here
Yep.
in this system, but
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a number of countries, I've worked in the interim in Nauru, and they've adopted a new leadership code there. They went out and consulted every village, every family in the entire country. And I mean, Nauru's even smaller than Palau.
Yeah.
But it was very good. And one of the big things they came up with was that they wanted to establish an office of the Ombudsman, but they were honest about everybody on Nauru knows each other and related. So
one way or another.
So the position of Ombudsman should be filled by somebody who's a non-Nauruan.
Yeah.
And so there was community consensus on that. And
I think here we accept that. That's why no Palauan has ever been a special prosecutor.
Yes.
Because it's very hard, and I think so all these special prosecutors, even though most of them screwed up or they had some criminal record in US and they didn't show it, so they were sent back. But
we really appreciate April Cripps though. She's done a lot of good work
Yeah.
Yep.
here
And
in Palau ever since she came.
yeah. And
But tell me, I think
Okay.
why do we have office like this? Why do we have special prosecutor? Why do we have office like this to
Ombudsman.
to make sure that corruption doesn't get expand? Or why do you stop the corruption? Why don't you? If corruption is allowed in the government, so that high government officials can use public funds to serve their own interest, or to hire their own people, or to give contract to their friends, why not in a small place like this continue that? Why do we have institutions or office like the UN office and others to control this kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, I guess since the beginning of time, since the apple with Adam and Eve, it's a part of human nature that self-interest, and particularly with families.
Yes.
If a family's involved, your self-interest often takes a priority, and sometimes it can blind, particularly people in power, to what the priorities are. And we just look at the recent Tongan election. 4 ministers have all been convicted and have lost their seats for gifts during the election period. Now, one of them, it was $10 of chips he gave to voters. But the legislation in Tonga was very clear. They all knew during the election period, you can't pretend it's a cultural practice that I've got to give a voter a speedboat
You got to write it down.
whatever.
Record
Yes.
it
Money
somewhere.
Got to be transparent. And so in Tonga, and the Supreme Court there backed it, and so 4 ministers have lost their seats.
Wow.
And I think it's only 10 years that I've been coming to Palau and in other countries, and I think that issue of gifts, there has been a change, and I think that's one of the reasons. What we saw as cultural and acceptable before, be it in the church, in government, in sporting groups, we now realise that it is corrupt. If the intent is to influence a person to vote for you or to approve something that you've got a financial interest in, then it is corruption. It's not cultural.
Or hiring your relatives or friends who are disqualified, so they go work in the government, they don't perform, you spend public funds paying for them, and then so the people loses. The money that's supposed to can go to other projects, go to hiring employment salary of a person who's incompetent, but just because he's your friend or your relative, you hire him, and it just.
Well, I really want to thank you, John, because you've been our anti-corruption advisor for Palau. You work with Palau Media Council, Palau Chamber of Commerce, the government, and I remember since the first workshop I took with you, I think we've gone a long way. We've progressed and learned exactly what bribery is now. And I had asked Moses to translate it, and he came up with a perfect word in Palauan. It's o mga tarbas. So now we can explain it more to people what
And I
corruption
think
is.
it's hard because it's the people doing it are the people with power, and they have money, or they're in government, or they're traditional chiefs, and it's Palau. It's kind of scaled down because we're very open. One thing about us is, in the media here, we just like here, newspapers, we just publish it or just say it, So it's done, but it's in a smaller scale, not as big as other islands. Like I know in Chuuk, I go there, and I know in the Marshalls is I see in Ponape. I see in the FSM community because they're my friends. I know them, and sometimes they said, we need we need people like you. We need newspaper people, in our so that can expose all this because the poor people, ordinary folks, like 90% of people, they see it but they quiet.
They're afraid.
They're afraid to say anything or to do anything.
And I think that's one of the things again during the COVID time when people have lost jobs, when the economy's gone down, people have realised state funds should be sacrosanct. You can't be wasting. You can't be just letting the elite or the people with power monitor that sort of funding. And it's probably one of the reasons, the New Zealanders through MFAT, the Australian government through its DFAT, have been funding activities here. So our activities with the school students, with the Chamber of Commerce, the Media Council and the government, this trip helped out by the New Zealanders, and the European Union's now getting more involved in the Pacific. We've got a big UNODC project in Papua New Guinea with the EU, and a new one that we're hoping will be helping Palau as well with the Australians in DFAT. So I think everybody's realising we've got to strengthen governance. We've got it. Every dollar is valuable, and the key thing out of yesterday, the president remembered, and he said when he was first involved in the Senate, and he went to a UNODC and GOPAC. That's my other hat with Global Organisation of Parliamentarians Against Corruption. It was a workshop we did in 2016 with the senators, and he said, I realised. I took away from that workshop that you've got to have independent agencies like the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Yes. And as you'll know, he said yesterday there have been attempts over the years to close down that office, but if legislators do anything...
That, when he first came into the office, I said, oh my God, maybe this guy will... Because he's a businessman,
Yes.
But he stood up and said, no, we need this, and he's been supporting.
He's a very honest gentleman.
Yeah.
So I think we've gone a long way. I have a question. Since you have so many years, John, experience in not only Asia Pacific but also in Asia. I know in Asia they bargain, they haggle, and in the Pacific we have a little bit of a different, the accepting of gifts. Sometimes we can't say no when somebody gives us food. What do you think is easier? Is it has it been easier to transition the Pacific to know more about corruption with their cultural practices, or is it easier in Asia? They're fast and they haggle. It's in their culture. It's in their.
Yep. I guess a big difference maybe in Asia is the power of the military in so many governments. So I live in Thailand, and we have coups quite often, and the current government is still military influence. I think, as Moses alluded to, the freedom of the media is coupled with the cultural practices in the Pacific makes the Pacific a lot more transparent. And in many ways, the media in Palau and I think Solomon Islands are more open and freer than Australia. There may be efforts in the Solomons and elsewhere to curtail media freedom, but you do. It's a treasure, and once that door's open, it does help making whether you're the president, legislator, judge, pastor. If you're a person in authority, then you have to be held to account.
Yes.
Yeah.
John, there's a call.
Yeah.
Will tuta caller kangara air?
Oi, malungi tuto yako Udesuall Irene ma station. Ma tinga tu wetslok yak. maripto katokol mam dung malwil tutol mura ngal tubugat serok ya malipto katokol mam dung gajim salma ngei mong kora mora ngok se ay kal tokol mam dung kamnango ndo se kamnango go yude kal to ndako mam no tungara asero oyo mong akpai muspe ra ordel sel miribas corruption después haber la corrupción da uda sur alto du molto del me taki mo ngei thank you sulang pai
Sulang.
Sige daw. Makam so di Udesuall again.
I'm going to say this in Palawan and then English. Kung daswe, mal masawla ko lereng irmangaling, baral batokar ating kay mal honest. Batokar atul waingil, tiakalungil, matangalit yal tokor o mga darbas. Mang kagitan malungil arungul merang asulil wasakata masaw taringi. So the caller represents, he's a very honest citizen who represents a lot of people in Palau who still have a very tough time understanding what corruption is. And so he was honest and he was grateful and called to say thank you that we're talking about it on air.
You know, it's hard to, especially us, I mean, her and I, we've been a subject of a lot of, like personal attack. I mean, people call me or see me on the street or in the shopping.
They get mad at us.
And then they, really, because it's hard, like in my case, I have some very serious case where, like, my son was arrested in Guam, and the Guam media, because they know me, because I would, it came out, the newspapers, and because he says, like, I guess he slapped his wife, son, and so the neighbor report. So he told the police, he says, men should be in control, women should not, talk back to, so that they quote him. Yeah. So the media in Guam, the TV station called me up, so I said, what? And then he sent me the news, So I published it. And then lo and behold, I mean, my sister, my niece and nephews, and the mother, and I mean, they didn't talk to me like for 1 year.
They're like, it's your own son.
Yeah, why, And then even some of my friends, they said, you just should have kept it quiet. You didn't report. So I said, how can I believe in transparency and open government and open society. So how can I report other Palawans arrested in Guam or in U.S. commit crime or even here?
And not my own son.
And not my own son, because it's an affair. It's a public matter, and that. So it's hard for for people in the media, and also, I mean, for the people in the government also, because for last 2 or 3 weeks, we have high police officers who got into an accident, drunk. They keep it there. High police officer who beat up another police officer during working hours, kept quiet. So we have to come out in the newspaper.
Police officer who was taking things out.
Yeah, police officer who was taking things, donation from Australia. I mean, over almost 20,000 was taken to her. So they arrest her. Then they, but they kept it under wrap. So we finally have to address it here and in the newspaper. And finally, they filed charges. And they filed charges, I mean, even reduced to the minimal charge. So it's, and I look at it and I said, I guess, like, look at the U.S. government. I mean, look at the former President Trump. I mean, all this illegal stuff, and they're still doing, they're not arresting him yet. Because I guess, when you're higher positioned or you're a selected class, upper class in the society, law enforcement, it's hard to charge them.
Yeah, if you can afford very good lawyers, it gets harder. But, when we set up our Corruption and Crime Commission in Western Australia, and I was involved in that and the legislation, and a lot of my parliamentary friends said, well, it's unfair. We're treated differently to normal people. And yes, if you're in a position of leadership, you should be held to a higher position.
Correct.
You've got privileges, you've got power, you are different to somebody in the street who may not have a job, or somebody who's having to work there as hard as everything every day. So yes, it is. You are being held to a higher standard, and it was going back to the Nauru consultation. Their definition of the leadership code was anybody is a leader who can make a decision that influences us. So from the Chief Justice, the President, down to a land office person. It was really into the plough and said, no, we want somebody who's issuing a licence in the land office, or a very junior policeman who can give us a ticket. They should be covered by this leadership code as well, and be held to a standard.
I think it's fair. It's fair.
Yeah.
You know, human beings, doesn't matter what position, but I really want to share how super proud I am of the Palau Media Council, because since you've been working together with them, they came up with the Open Government Act, you know, and that's really helped a lot. And so I don't know if it's okay with Moses, but I'm going to proceed with the judiciary in Palau right now is having corruption problems. The branch of the government, that is the judiciary, the third branch, is
And it's
going through major corruption.
And I've done
problems.
survey, and judiciary get A, and the administration get B, and then the Congress get like C or D, you know, before, you know.
Yeah.
So the judiciary in Palau look like it's at the pedestal. We have confidence, we trust them, but this new judiciary,
new leadership,
it's really a problem, because we see it. I mean, we see it. This little, you know, hanky-panky in the among the workers. Like, for example, there's a marshal. They fire him for supposedly not taking action regarding to activity in the office. You know, that so they fire him. He went to a hearing and he won. They appeal. And then they dismissed the case, so they went back again. They fired him again, so they went to a hearing, and he won. And so the judiciary appealed it, his employer. And then the Attorney General Administration, the executive branch, represented the judiciary in prosecuting him.
so it should be the SP, right?
Yeah.
Somebody independent.
I mean, it's kind of bizarre. I mean, two branches of the government.
I was also surprised to see
Come
that.
up on this small guy, employee in the judiciary. So I guess only the legislature didn't get participate in the mayhem or something. You know, like, you know, it's.
But that's like a national. I wouldn't say crisis right now, but on the level of spiritual knowledge and food that we talk about, anti-corruption, the judiciary right now is the branch of the government that is obviously there is corruption and, going on inside it. And Palau, we're so small, we're all interrelated. And so, you know, interviewing people is not easy.
There's small,
so-
there's small things like, you know, really wrongdoing. You know, I mean, they should just come out clean and said, okay, look, penalize the guy, give the person a chance. Okay, punish if evidence, and then if not, then say, okay, no, go through the open system to make sure that the act was committed or not, and then take action, and then be open about it. Because if they're hiding it, unless the media, unless this thing came out in the last week, one of the newspaper front page it. So now the Chief Justice responds. So we front page it, but
I'm very
otherwise,
disappointed with the response.
Yeah.
Last week, I'm very grateful to Island Times for printing the help letter from a concerned citizen. We don't know who wrote that, but it was somebody who is working in the system, so they know and see and observe. And it was a big help thing, like asking the Congress, like, can somebody in Congress whom we voted for do something? Somebody's got to do something about this corruption that's going on. We have a caller, and then John, maybe you can address that.
Ali caller ngara air.
Oi, malamit tutaw ko Janice kau ma ama Irene ma ngilmanga ma ngil alges kan malungil dire roger tiagi del ger morgi adin sa boger ngil al demoskra tetele la government el waseng wangara Udesuall el dire la structure la democratic system ra selvelau el ruba gadia kal ngelitra ara adra bedu ngara igal states mga national ngal olbira kululau posisi time engarni araaf el director del minister kota member raigal legislature kam gadil wasi tiang biakal director korupsyon ra sila a democratic system oman sudah
Masaw.
Yeah, the question is they want to ask you. There are traditional leaders who are not elected by the people, but they are part of the government at the national level or at the state government. Isn't that corruption? And also there are government officials who are also members of the state traditional, groups, leadership. Aren't they? Isn't that corruption?
Okay. Again, it's interesting. The UN Convention Against Corruption, there's no definition of corruption because what we talk about is corrupt activities. And I think, as you've said, you've taken the initiative to come up with a word in local language for corruption, and many of the Pacific societies are doing that. And the issue is transparency, and it's interesting you mentioned about how people perceive the judiciary as the top of the echelon.
Right, role model.
Yeah, and that perception, and that's one of the key issues when there are corrupt activities, when people lose faith in, be it government, judiciary, the administration, their churches, their traditional leaders. And look, it's not for me as a foreigner, it's not for the UN, which is always independent, to be saying what cultural practices are good or bad. It's for the local community, and many communities do legalise cultural practices that are different to an elected democratic system. But that's a discussion you've got to have.
But the corruption is more on the activity itself.
It's the activity.
It's not on the system.
Yeah, so whether you're a president, a judge, a church leader, a sports coach,
or a traditional leader, it can be
or
corrupt,
a traditional leader, a pastor.
You know what happened in Fiji when Bainimarama came in? He wiped out the Great Council of Chiefs of Fiji because of corruption.
Oh wow!
I mean, maybe other reasons, but that's one of the reasons he gave, because they get into business deals and all these hotels and stuff like that.
But in Samoa, the Matai system is still very entrenched. But again, local people perhaps vote in terms of villages with their Matai traditional leader system there. So the issue's transparency and about people's actions. If they're promising somebody a job through nepotism, not by ability, if money's involved, if gift giving, the guise of gift giving, you're getting a beautiful big pig, but you're saying, well, it's traditional. No, you just want a free feed. Then it's those discussions you've got to be having locally.
I think that's great that you say that, because we've had a little bit of this discussion about the judiciary, and we all agree, even Moses and majority of us in the media, we all agree that the former Chief Justice, he is known to be very direct. We say in Palawan, the mouth is not very, doesn't flower things when he says things. He was strict and says things very direct. But there was order in the judiciary. People were on time. People were following procedures. I'm sure they have their human resource procedures regarding administrative leave and other things that need to be followed. So there's fairness amongst all the employees of the judiciary. And they were very orderly. As Moses said, we look to the judiciary as a role model. But now we just keep finding out more and more that they're not following their administrative rules, and there's favoritism, and there's
And abuse of
people
power.
getting hurt, abuse of power.
Of certain individuals because of their connection.
Yeah.
And it's really not right.
Very
And,
sad.
because, and the example of it is some good people have resigned. Some of the long-time judiciary people that we know, young folks who developed the system, honestly with their work, they have to resign, and then when you ask them, he said, I just can't stand it anymore.
Or like the lady who or the gentleman who wrote that letter, help, last week, cannot wait, counting the days until they have to retire.
Yeah.
Because it's that bad.
So it's, I think it's, I think all these institutions, whether it's government institutions, social organizations, religious groups, I think it's really, I think the time has come that we have to have like certain guiding principles or code of ethics or that they have to
Yes.
follow, because this is and I think it's we should accept the fact that it's a different world. We have like money has come big role in our society, and a lot of money, and people co-preserve with money. And talking about help, COVID help from U.S. government, man, about maybe over 30 million was given to us. I mean, man, these people who were involved in it just went berserk.
Distribution, yeah,
They were giving it to their
distribution went
relatives, to
crazy.
their husband.
Yeah.
I mean, thousands of dollars. And even some of my relatives got money because they know somebody inside. So I said, how the hell did you get $9,000, $6,000? But it was like one of them look at me and said, why do you ask me? It's okay because I have connection inside, and it's good because it's good for me, and you are my relative. Why are you against me getting money? I said, wow, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that,
Yeah. And look, good people, traditionally, many in the judiciary have seen that they should be above the political fray, but people have to have confidence. And even if you're the most honest person on earth and a judge, you still, these days, you need to be transparent. So
Yes.
UNODC does a lot
Accountable.
of work on judicial integrity. We're getting invited in by the judiciary and the judges that say, okay, we need to update our code of ethics. We need to be more transparent so people can see, because we all know, being journalists here and members of parliament, that, there can be rumours, there can be false allegations.
Right.
Yeah, oh yeah, sure.
But if you're transparent in the judiciary or the government or the church, wherever, then you're able to deal with that. But if you keep saying, well, I'm a pastor, I'm a judge, I'm the president, how dare you say anything about me, that's not the issue. The issue is the transparency, so as if something ever happens,
Transparency,
it
absolutely.
Yeah,
can
and
be
then,
held to account.
Yeah.
Like the good example is like our Chief Justice. He's the number one defense lawyer before he became a judge, and people trust him. I mean, as a lawyer, man, a lot of top people here was their lawyer because he get you off the hook, or when you go to trial, he's the best. Then he became a Chief Justice. So I look at that lawyer. I said, this guy has forgotten that he's no longer a defense lawyer. He write as a defense lawyer for his employee, some of whom are screwed up. And then,
Or unqualified.
Yeah, and then he defend them with letter. So the letter looks like a criminal defense opposition. Right? And I said, so I'm going to tell him. I mean, after, if I find the chance, I said, hey, brother, I mean, gee, what happened?
I'm very sad because I think he's an excellent lawyer.
Yeah.
So I'm sad that
But he's our
as the-
Chief Justice. So
yeah, as the Chief Justice,
he should
he's
come
not
out clean. I mean, he should come out
transparent.
clean.
Yeah.
If we cannot have assign somebody to handle it, investigate it, have a hearing and stuff like, and then announce that it's this case, this charges is not, it's not been proven. It's wrong. This is right. And what,
And do,
Take-
and
taken
do
to-
something about the
to remedy,
unqualified employees. In the first place, I don't understand why he hires people in certain positions who are not qualified for those positions. Secondly, now that we have a corruption problem, I don't understand why he doesn't take care, rectify the problem by displacing or suspending or expelling or what he needs to do to correct the problem, the corruption system.
So I mean,
It's very
this is the only way. Openness, transparency is the only way to maybe, because this is getting our hand. I mean, when this thing, I heard about this matter in the judiciary, so I started snooping. I started asking individuals in the last 30 days. And man, the one they're telling me, my goodness, and these people are honest people, you know. They're working there, they know. So, and I said, how can this allowed to, it's like watching small cancer or swell and then swelling it.
Yeah, it's that bad, John.
So now before it really gets out of hand, you know, solve it, deal with it, you know.
We have a caller. Can we take this one? And
Sabi iul malkol to ba lagi o yudel mo kal
Oo,
atal sukum
to ko
question na mo ringi.
oh,
Ali color ngara air.
Yes, good morning to this talk show, Udesuall. And if I may participate in this conversation, I too am a fighter for injustice in this small society of Palau. I've had experience working in the system, in the judicial process. My question is, having been here and a great advisor to the two gentlemen and the lady there, I'm asking if you see such nepotism as an element in Palau, and it's a destruction of the process to give service to the people. When to cut it short, do you feel it's necessary to suggest or remind the president to bring back the ombudsman office to greatly help the people who complain about the system, especially when you talk about judiciary? It disturbs me to know that there is corruption going on in a place where I worked once before. So I thank you for your direction and advice on this matter.
Okmal masaul,
There was an
malungin
office for an ombudsman. I was
Yes.
one
Yes.
time, but
Yep.
it's closed now. So
Yeah,
that's
well,
his
it's
recommendation.
interesting that the UN Convention report that I said Palau just published, to its credit, totally last month, and one of the recommendations within that from the peer reviewers and people in Palau was to look at the issue of re-establishing the Ombudsman's office. So it's important that that discussion is being had by Palauans. And, what we see around the world is you can't rely on just having one integrity agency. So it's not enough just to have the Attorney General's office. It's not enough just to have Office of the Special Prosecutor. If you do have a variety of offices, such as an ombudsman, and that's what Nauru is doing. So they're establishing for the first time an ombudsman. And so that's a really important discussion. You've had a previous office here, so it's up to you Palauans to say, okay, are we going to be better off by re-establishing that office? What do we want it to be doing?
By the way, that caller was a high official in the judiciary.
in the court, in the judiciary
he was,
also.
how do
He's
we call that?
retired now, I
Yeah,
think.
he's retired. The former Chief Justice fired him. And I represent him in a hearing, in a government hearing. And the clerk of court was a lawyer, represent the judiciary. We went to hearing and we won. So then I was concerned that I said, if the court appeals it, appeal the decision, then because you're entitled to appeal, whoever wins or loses. So I went to see the Chief Justice. He threw me out of his office. He said, "Are you crazy? What kind of system is this? Is this a jungle system or what? he made a decision, tell him to come to
You
work
won the
next day.
You won the case.
Yeah, I'm not.
Come back to
He
work.
said, I'm not. How can I appeal?
Excellent.
And he said,
Clear.
if it's anybody to appeal, it's him. It's your client. If he lost his case, so he's done.
Yep.
Then he can appeal, but not the court.
Yeah.
Now, in this recent case, it's just the opposite.
Yeah, with
You know, the
Jeff Mertel case. Yeah.
The guy it was a lower marshal that they fired, and that his offense is minor compared to this guy's offense. And then he won, and then the court appealed, and the Attorney General office, the executive branch, represent the court against this guy. I mean, to me, that's kind of a corruption
Conflict of interest
highest
already.
degree, I mean,
Huge
how can
conflict of
they,
interest.
So the guy's been unemployed for like 2 years, and I talked to him last week. They just settled a case with him,
They had him sign a disclaimer.
yeah, and then they paid him off. So I mean, it's really bizarre in light of this. After all this latest things coming out of the court, I mean, this is getting out of hand.
Yeah, one thing that we notice is there are employees of the government that forget that they are public servants. So they start to act like they control the system. And my sadness and disappointment is in the top of the chain. The boss, the CJ, should suspend, expel, write a letter, say, you need to take a break for 2 weeks and think about your moral values, but he doesn't do anything. I was disappointed with his response.
Yeah. So it's, I've said it so many times here and in public meetings, and when I, have an occasion to speak publicly on this kind of thing, that I think is the best way for us to think about it is that, okay, if nepotism, corruption, cronyism is allowed, just imagine if the person in power is allowed to do that, And I tell the people in power, what happens if your opposition take over, wins a public office, and go do the same, and you're out? What do you think? That's why there's a
Right.
Palawan expression. It basically says, if you're a high clan, if you're a noble, act as a noble.
Yes.
And it's a British term. If you're a noble, act as a noble.
Yeah.
Palawan says, asun ka mete, ngara, ateteri omrelian mete. Omola bangara.
Don't be corrupt. Be accountable.
If you're a high clan or you're noble, you have to perform. You have to live to the honor and the dignity of that office you have. So it's really something that this because in our culture also, if people selected to be chief because of their performance and their behavior, they don't select a person who's selfish, who get things for
Take
put money in his
public
pocket from the
community
clan,
stuff
from
and
the,
for
from
himself.
the community. So it's
Yeah.
it's really something that we need now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's very good that you're having these discussions, and from our talkback callers today, it's clear people want to
Community.
talk about integrity issues.
Yes.
So, well done.
Yeah.
So what's this? I know. I want to ask you. I'm sure you have some inkling on this thing from Solomon's yesterday, that the Prime Minister is going to put some restriction on the media people foreign media going into Solomon's, and also may restrict the local media.
Yep. Well,
wow.
you shouldn't be giving the Palauans ideas. I think some countries, Kiribati, if journalists want to go in, I think it's a $500 visa.
Whoa.
A number of countries do have special visas. So again, it's up to every country to make their own rules, and you'd hope, I guess the three of us should declare an interest, because if we want, we've got the Pacific Media Conference in the Solomons at the end of September, so I'm hoping they won't have to pay for a visa to go into Solomons. But it's up to every country to do, and we should salute Palau for not charging journalists to come into the country here.
As long as they do a good background check about the journalist and where they come from, and I think
but the
helps.
good thing in the Solomons is the media, like here, is free, and so they're able to criticise proposals or support proposals without being affected,
Penalised,
hopefully penalised. Yes.
So, Jan, we are coming to an end of
we
our
have
show.
one caller before we end. Could we take him or her?
Yes, let's take
And
that
then-
one more.
Ali caller ngara air.
Oi, tutau mura rabangalap ma nilalges ma Irwin. Rabangalap ngungila kari lenggele laspel gole. En ngoger el wasen trouble gul segi de lobis ra ombudsman. Selgaler ma uriula. Paida ereng il amlong adulol sakri gid malakal pornya tokol tel mal girela. Ay gid do sa. Es el bodo madri baslo kole tel beladi to kaslo korni di adol tobre. Mojak reng sing dile am mojak losis aklis. Musulang.
Amal masawla caller and they go rang saka kadiri kal tartirigel suam belgora di malket kangil. Salokal mang mobadiw. Mobadiw di kal masil di kal makatmok.
Dia kang why say tilay gida malungil luul excuse mo kada mo Marta adaligi nget. Di pa mo tingalo sa ikadi adaligi nget ikadi kasal galet. Ay kata atko la kabelmenter kau mga kabelmenter gida sungo yam ta sungo ni kasi lo marat bay gida lo top mo so esma de sumok alageng mo molal al mol di kilo bu.
Oh, mo cancer mo. The caller was concerned that it's best that we don't talk about our laundry and just let you teach us how to deal with corruption. Well, it starts with a conversation. That's what our advisor has taught us.
He's our chief. He's
And-
the plant chief for both of us.
I don't think we I don't think the old way of colonial missionaries works, even if it did originally.
Yeah.
And it's really important that groups like the UNODC and the UN and GOPAC and others are available with expert technical advice, but in the end the decision making has to be local.
Yeah,
You have
community.
the local community has to decide what are the standards for our judiciary, what are the standards for the president, what are the standards for
Congress,
policemen,
law
Congress,
enforcement.
and ever. And we can give you examples from 189 other countries, and many of them are all different.
Yeah.
But it's got to be local solutions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing that,
So-
John. Ngirmang diswa kalaw ay sulwa se awul ndire kal gire dal karigi kla other bela wala kadangara tier 2 watch list. We're on tier 2 watch list. That also involves human trafficking is corruption. All of these things we need. Palau needs money. We cannot get help and funding from certain banks, World Bank, and if we continue to be on tier 2 watch list. So, angko, tiang ay miss klo tutalel tokorel, kirel, modiakal nga ringi tialo mga tarbas.
Okay, Jan. We have a few minutes, so we'll give you a chance to close. So you're going to be here for the next, 1 week or so. So tell us, what are you going to do? Because we don't want you to cause trouble here.
Okay, all right.
They might, people like him and others say, now this Moses and Irene and Mida, they're going to use this guy to go around causing trouble.
Yeah.
Palau is
No.
blessed to have John.
So
No,
in the next,
well, I mean, it's great to be listening.
so in the next few days, you're going to meet with whom, and then
The Attorney General and a number of government agencies, for them to be looking at this UNCAT, UN Convention Against Corruption review, the open, transparent review that Palau has done, and all these recommendations about considering the Ombudsman, looking at do we need whistleblower protection here, So myself and my colleagues in the UN, we're able to provide technical advice. You want whistleblower legislation? Bang, I'll work all night and give you a draft for you to look at and to you to make into Palauan legislation.
Very
but
nice.
it's up to the local officials.
To pass it.
Yeah, and to consult.
Right.
Also,
I think, so that you know, we have like 5 entities here that are doing this kind. There's a financial group, and there's ethics commission, and there's AC office, and there's public
SP.
auditor. There are too many, and I think that's a problem in itself. You know, in a small place like this, we should kind of consolidate them to. There are too many, so and they're ineffective. They're like a
Maybe
car dog that cannot park and have no teeth. You know?
Maybe consolidate a database at least.
Yeah, or one big thing, you know, I worked with the Solomons when they set up their anti-corruption commission, and the key thing there was people wanted a one-stop shop. They don't know what the leadership commission does, the ombudsman does, the OSP does. So people shouldn't have to work out. Have a one-stop shop, and then all the integrity agencies, they work out when the report comes in, who should it go to. Yeah. So don't have the people having to worry about the system. Make the system work. For the community
benefit of the
and
community.
to be effective.
Yeah, in that regard, a citizen just sent a message to inform through media that the Bureau of Public Safety also has a lot of corruption among officers, from top to corporal officers, and the activities continue to grow in the Bureau. So I think we can ask Minister Charles Obiang to look at his staff also, the Bureau of Public Works under him.
The U.S. system, they have what they call Solicitor General within each department of U.S. government. The lawyers there who are supposed to look at things and make sure that this is legal or not legal and give advice and stuff like that. So, you know, I was thinking about this because I was an ombudsman, and we did during Toribio administration, we tried to do something like that so that all these entities, they can work together. And then, so when information, like if there's an allegation of wrongdoing or charges, complaints and this, which office would go to so that they can, and then to get information sometimes very difficult. So I think that's another way that when you meet with the government entities and bodies involved in this thing, it's something to look at, because to organize it in such a way that it can be effective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, we give you the last word to give you
to close.
Departing words.
All right. Well, my main wish is that it's not 2 years before I'm back seeing you all again, and I am heartened. I can see over 10 years the changes that happen everywhere, and also in Palau, and it's really. We've been working with the 5 high schools this week and also next week.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And to hear the young voices, they know what's right, what's wrong, and they've had really intelligent discussions on integrity.
And you cannot hide anymore because of this little machine,
Yes.
You know everything.
They can take a picture of that. And so and the media, working again with the media on Monday, and with the Chamber of Commerce as well, and obviously the Office of the Special Prosecutor and the Attorney General. So, yes, let's keep the discussion going. I can't make any opinions. I'm an outsider. The UN is there to provide technical advice. And so government requests, agencies requests, media request, will come and help. But it's your decision making.
Do you promise to work with your bosses in UN or in Bangkok to establish an office in the North Pacific to be based in Palau? This kind of office, at least one, because I'm jealous. Why one in Fiji?
Bangkok,
why
Thailand, and Fiji?
No,
Fiji.
We have established a UN coordinator's office here with Sharon Sakuma.
Oh yeah, he's in Pohnpei. Yep.
Yeah, but she's part of the Pohnpei is now looking after the Micronesia, so that's within the UN structure. But PIFs, Pacific Island Forum, they've now committed, in keeping you and the other Micronesians in the family, that they'll establish a North Pacific office. So
good. Hopefully
I think,
Palau.
well, Palau should be in there lobbying
Yes.
the PIFs.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thank
John.
you very much.
Thanks, Irene.
Yeah.
Thanks, Moses.
Yeah, Mr.
Baloi-
John
baloi.
Hyde.
Baloi siya ko malam sulal bukti lakal merelang kita masada tiang amring toy ming
Why
boda
say?
itu saudan ngi mang sukum ngaria ko tokoil ko ramildung tomeliar ngul chief justice magamil adra ko tamara trir mas ilir faikan agi ama dimlakal dimlakal ko malamal at mamalmalar kami maldi wasendiak kalau mesa tiang dia kas edel dilmu kem ere tiang gid ko ingirel mukatmok lesbe mukatmok li
Why say?
Ini di bom open el girel untuk bodo tengel wasing. Mlo girel kira igal tukoy.
Why
Nam
say?
dura buhay.
Makumal Masaul, have a good weekend. See you next week.